In this lesson, you'll learn to sketch two-dimensional shapes while working in a conceptual massing environment. So let's get started. So here I am in Revit, and I'm in my recent files window here. And we're at a point now where we're going to be working with the families area here in Revit. And we're going to be working in the conceptual massing template. So we'll double click on that option and we'll be prompted with a window here, and you'll see mass inside this folder. That's actually our massing template. Once we double click that, Revit will open us up in the conceptual massing environment. Now, the great thing about working with conceptual massing in Revit is it actually provides you flexibility early in your design process to explore different building forms. Essentially, what you're doing is you're creating a two-dimensional form on any level you want to work on. You're going to extrude that two-dimensional form to a three-dimensional shape, and then you can later manipulate its points, surfaces, and edges to create that building form that you're looking for. So we'll go ahead and jump in, and before we do start creating our forms and shapes, let's get familiar with this view here working in this environment. So you notice the main difference here is the three-dimensional view. We'll actually be working in this view almost the entire time. You'll notice the background is a gray background with a gradient here. It's a little bit different than the project template we've been working in our architectural template, but it's a little bit easier to work with and it's very user-friendly. So up here in our top right, we still have our view cube, and again, it works just how it does in our architectural template. We simply click on the area we want to view, and Revit will automatically make that adjustment for us. So I can look at the top view, I can look at my directional elevations here on the west side. Very easy to use. If we wanted to zoom in and out, we can also use our zoom region button here as well. By clicking that, we can actually create a small window around an area that we want to zoom in on, and we can do that. Just every time we do it, we have to click it again, and we can actually get in closer and closer. And another thing you'll remember from our project template is our object wheel here. We can use that in this view just as well. So by clicking on orbit, we can orbit around, and we can zoom in and out by clicking our zoom button. You can also hit escape to get out of that command. Now, I find it a lot easier to actually use my quick keys when working in this view. So I'll actually be using my shift button and pushing down my wheel to actually do all of my orbiting. And I'll also be using my wheel rolling up and down to scroll in and out. I find these two ways a lot easier than having to constantly look back and move back and think about what view I want to see on my view cube, or constantly having to click to zoom in and out several times using my zoom region. So with these things in mind, let's go ahead and start working with our levels in our project here. So you'll notice here we have our project browser window, and just like in our project template, we have all of our views: 3D view, our floor plan views, as well as our elevations. But the main difference in working in this environment is we don't have to be in the elevation views to actually set our levels. We could do it right here in our 3D view. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So you'll notice here we have level 1, and when I click on it, it'll highlight level 1 for me, and I can actually draw on this plane if I wanted to. Earlier in my design process, I decided I wanted my building here to be 8 stories tall and be 10 feet top of slab height each story. So we'll go ahead and set that right now. So to do that, we'll go to the top of our ribbon here and click on Create. And you'll notice here to the right in that ribbon, we have our Levels button. Once you select that, you can begin setting up all your levels. And working with levels in this view is very easy because you're not worried about any start or end points. You're simply letting Revit know what the distance is. The start and end points on your elevation or level line is already set in place for you. So I know that I want 8 levels, so I found it really quickly to simply place my cursor here at many levels above that I know what I'm going to be at. And I can simply type in my values and hit enter several times until I get to the 8th floor. And the great thing about it is I don't have to type in anything to note that I'm working with feet. Simply typing in 10 and hitting an enter, Revit will automatically assume that I'm working in feet. And if I want to work in inches, I'd have to use, I could type in 10 and a quotation and then hit enter. Then it would be 10 inches. But I'll show you exactly how this works here. So I'll type in 10, hit enter. And you'll see I've created my second level 10 feet up. And again, I'm going to put my cursor here at an extreme that I know I'm not going to go to this height. So it's 192 feet. So I'm going to place the rest of my levels really quickly here. Type in 10, enter, 10, enter, 10, enter. And I'm going to keep doing this until I get to the 8th level. And once I hit the 8th level, I'll hit escape once. I'm out of that command and my levels are set really quickly. Now, once we have those in place, we can actually begin working with our two-dimensional forms to create our three-dimensional shape in the next lesson. So to do that, we must first click Model Line here in our tab here. And what that does, it actually allows us to actually draw out the footprint of our building or our mass in two-dimensional form. Had we chosen a reference here, we actually would have been just creating a reference line. And had we chosen this plane button here, we would have actually been choosing a reference plane. And in this lesson, we're not too worried about setting constraints or reference planes. We just want to learn how to actually create our mass and create a concept from our model here. So we'll stick with our model line so we can get these this model drawn out. And I'm not going to work with the single line tool. I'm going to take full benefit of these preloaded shapes here. I'm going to work with rectangles, but if you wanted to, you could draw out single lines or curves. It just really depends on your design. I can actually start working on my two-dimensional shapes here in 3D view. As I mentioned, we'll be working in this view most of this course, or most of this lesson here. So I'll start with the first rectangle here. I'll simply click my point of origin there, and I'll go to the opposite corner, and that is my first rectangle. In my concept, I wanted to use some overlapping rectangles. So I'll create a second rectangle here, and I'll create my third rectangle. And later on in the lesson, we'll actually join the geometry. And by doing so, we'll actually clean out these interior overlapping lines here, giving us a nice clean floor plate. So once I have these two-dimensional drawings set in place, we are now ready to turn these into three-dimensional masses, and we'll actually jump into that in the next lesson.